No more distractions. We have a plan, and we need to get on and deliver it.
The Fed know where the dollar is at all times.
We print it digitally, so we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money.
If printing money solved economic problems, Zimbabwe would be the new Silicon Valley, Venezuela, a global powerhouse, and the central bank, a genie in a lamp. Just rub an HP printer and your financial wishes come true. But no, in the real world, printing money recklessly is the economic equivalent of trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The question, why can't we just print more money to pay off debt, sounds as logical as it is tempting. After all, money is created by governments, right? So what's stopping countries from solving their problems with a simple Control plus P? The answer, unfortunately, involves more than paper, ink, and good intentions. It involves trust, real economic output, and a collective trauma inherited from the 20th century. A trauma that includes runaway inflation, political collapses, and the mysterious disappearance of the middle class. Let's get one thing straight. Money is not wealth. Money is just a symbol, a representation of value that people believe it holds. If tomorrow everyone decided that a $100 bill is better used as a bookmark, it becomes a bookmark. Simple as that. That's why the value of money doesn't come from the ink, the paper, or the number printed on it. It comes from trust. Money is, essentially, a collective agreement that this piece of paper or number on your banking app can serve as a medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account. In other words, money only works because we all pretend together that it does. It's basically theater, just without the glamour, costumes, or dignity. And that trust, it's fragile. Like a politician's reputation, it takes years to build and can disappear with a single badly worded tweet. When a country decides to print money to pay off debt, it's basically saying, don't worry, we've got a plan, and that plan is to ignore all basic economic principles. Trust begins to crumble, investors flee, markets react like a startled cat, and inflation comes knocking without even saying hello. That's exactly what happened in Weimar Germany after World War I. The government, drowning in war debt, decided to print marks like they were flyers. The result? By 1923, the price of a loaf of bread could rise between breakfast and lunch. People literally burned money to stay warm because it was cheaper than buying firewood. And no, that's not a metaphor. There are actual photos of it in history books. Printing money to deal with debt is like lying to your doctor about your symptoms. It might feel more comfortable in the short term, but the final diagnosis will hurt and probably involve surgery. Economics runs on expectations. And when those expectations are that the currency will lose value, it will lose value. Doesn't matter how much you print. What matters is what people believe that money is worth. And there's the catch. Trust is hard to rebuild. Once broken, it behaves more like a porcelain vase than a rubber band. You might glue it back together, but it's never quite the same. Printing money is seductive. It's fast, painless, and gives the illusion that everything is under control. Like spraying deodorant instead of taking a shower. Works for a few hours, but eventually, someone's going to notice. In economic terms, printing currency is the same as flooding the system with liquidity. More money circulating, more people consuming, more businesses selling. Sounds like a flawless plan. Just one problem. If the production of goods and services stays the same, but the amount of money increases, prices start to rise. And when prices rise uncontrollably, you don't get economic growth. You get inflation. That old friend who eats away at wages, savings, and national patience. Picture an economy as a pizza divided among 10 people. Suddenly, you print more money and invite 10 more guests. But the pizza stays the same. What happens? Each slice becomes worth less. The savvy ones start hoarding slices before they disappear. The result? Scarcity, a rush on goods, and a sense that money has lost its flavor. That's called demand-pull inflation, a phenomenon as old as time whenever money is printed without backing and productivity. It's the classic law of supply and demand, which, for some mysterious reason, governments love to pretend doesn't exist. Keynes, Yes, the same Keynes politicians and market analysts constantly quote out of context understood that inflation could be used as a tool in very specific moments, but even he made it clear. Using the printing press as a permanent shortcut is state-level self-deception. It's the economic equivalent of pushing a broken-down car downhill and thinking you've solved the engine problem. You're just delaying the disaster, and you'll still have to push it back up on foot. And inflation, contrary to what some overly excited pundits claim, doesn't affect everyone the same way. The poor, who spend most of their income on basic goods, suffer the most. Asset holders, real estate, stocks, gold, Bitcoin, and questionable contemporary art protect themselves and often even profit. In the end, printing money is a silent, indirect, and pretty cruel way of transferring wealth from the poor to the rich. And the most ironic part? It's all done in the name of social justice and stability. It's like throwing a hunger relief party and serving caviar only in the VIP section. At this point, someone always raises a virtual hand and asks, but the US prints trillions and they're still standing strong. Why can they and others can't? Excellent question. And the answer is, because the dollar isn't just a currency, it's a privilege. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means virtually every country needs it to buy oil, pay international debts, and build foreign reserves. That creates a constant demand for the US dollar, no matter what the Federal Reserve is doing with its printer. It's like the US has a limitless credit card, and no one dares cut it off. But don't be fooled. When the US prints money, they're not just paying off debt with ink. What the Fed does is called quantitative easing, a policy where the central bank buys government bonds and private assets to inject liquidity into the financial system. In theory, it's an emergency measure to stimulate the economy during crises. In practice, it's like a doctor prescribing steroids. It works fast, but the side effects are real. In fact, the spike in US inflation between 2021 and 2023, after the pandemic stimulus packages, served as a reminder that not even Uncle Sam can mock the laws of economics with impunity. Gas prices skyrocketed, rent became a nightmare, and coffee, capitalism's sacred fuel, started tasting bitter in people's wallets. The problem is that other countries tried to copy the trick, without the stage, the costume, or the audience. Turkey, for instance, bet on low interest rates and monetary expansion, believing it could tame inflation by yelling at it. The result? A devalued currency, capital flight, and a president giving economic interviews with more confidence than actual content. The UK also flirted with the edge in 2022, when it announced a tax cut package without explaining how it would be paid for. The market responded by tanking the pound, like someone dumping a bad drink on purpose. The difference is that the US can bluff because the whole world needs their chips. It's called the exorbitant privilege, a term coined by economist Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, a former French president whose name sounds like an expensive cologne. This privilege allows the US to finance its deficits in its own currency, something no other country can do at the same scale. But even this privilege has limits. And the last few years have shown that if the Fed goes too far, the world starts looking for alternatives. Yuan, euro, crypto, gold, or even bartering cows for vaccines. Remember trust? It's hard to earn and easy to lose. The harsh truth is, there is no economic magic. There's no secret button at the central bank that solves everything with a Harry Potter spell.
Bureaucratios expelliarmus.
Solving public debt in a sustainable way requires what every politician promises, but few deliver: responsibility, long-term vision, and a minimum dose of coherence. In the end, what pays debt isn't ink, it's work, it's growth, it's productivity. When a country seriously invests in infrastructure, quality education, legal stability, and innovation, it's expanding its capacity to generate real wealth, the kind that doesn't rely on accounting tricks or freshly printed bills. Healthy economies function like efficient companies. They attract investment, create value, and have enough credibility to borrow at low interest rates because lenders believe they'll get their money back. But if the government starts covering its expenses by printing money, that trust evaporates faster than a campaign promise after Inauguration Day. What follows is predictable. Capital flight, currency devaluation, rising prices, falling purchasing power, and inevitably, a population banging pots in the streets or typing in all caps on social media. International organizations have made this clear many times. The IMF, for example, in its 2020 fiscal monitor, highlighted that printing money to finance public spending can be useful in emergencies, like wars or pandemics. But outside those situations, it's basically playing with fire next to a gas station. And history backs this up. Zimbabwe in the 2000s became a living meme of hyperinflation. Argentina, with its tradition of reviving inflation with every new administration, serves as a constant reminder that winging it with monetary policy can cost more than facing the problem head-on. The way out is boring, bureaucratic, and slow, which probably explains why it's so rarely chosen. Sustainable growth doesn't make headlines, and it certainly doesn't guarantee instant re-election. But it actually works. It's like going to the gym. You won't see results on day one. It hurts, it's exhausting, but it prevents major issues down the road. Printing money, on the other hand, is like taking steroids without working out. It may look like it's working for a while, until your liver files for resignation.
I quit!
Printing money to pay off debt is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline just because it's easier to find. It's a magical solution that only works in cartoons, and even then, usually ends badly. The real antidote to debt is fiscal responsibility, sustainable growth, and, maybe the hardest part of all, patience. Because economics isn't magic, it's math. And if there's one thing math hates, it's cheating. If you enjoyed this dive into the raw, unfiltered, and slightly sarcastic side of economics, smash that like button. Share it with that friend who still thinks the government should just print more money. And subscribe for more painful truths told with a smile. Because laughing is better than crying, especially when inflation comes knocking. Thanks for watching.